There is a kind of pain in trading that no chart can measure, no broker can see, and no risk report can quantify. It is the pain of betraying yourself. Not the market betraying you, not the strategy failing you betraying you. It's the moment you break your own rules, the rules you swore you'd follow, the rules you wrote with a clear mind, the rules designed to protect you from the worst parts of yourself. Yet when the moment of truth arrives, something inside you fractures. A switch flips. Your hand moves before your mind can catch it. And in that instant, in the small, almost invisible gap between intention and action, you abandon the person you promised to become. You feel it immediately. Not always in the account balance, but in your chest, in the tightening breath, in the quiet shame that creeps in after the impulsive click. You know what you've done. You have violated your own boundaries. You've crossed your own line. You've broken the one contract that truly matters in this game, the contract with yourself. This is the betrayal that haunts traders. Not the loss of money, but the loss of integrity. Not the volatility of price, but the volatility of identity. Ryan Holiday once said, "Ego is the enemy." He wasn't talking about charts or markets. He was talking about this exact moment, when the ego panics, when it fears being wrong, when it cannot tolerate uncertainty, and when it convinces you to abandon the discipline you built in calmer times. But that's only half the story. Mark Douglas believed that every rule you break is rooted in a deeper truth. You don't trust yourself to follow through. And when you don't trust yourself, the mind becomes chaotic. The market becomes threatening. Every tick feels personal. Every fluctuation feels dangerous. And your rules, which once looked solid, begin to feel negotiable, flexible, optional. That's the real battlefield. Not the candlestick, not the trend line, not the stop loss. The battlefield is within you, between the version of you who wrote the rules and the version of you who abandons them. Between the part of you that craves structure and the part of you that craves relief. Between the disciplined architect of your trading plan and the impulsive survivor inside your nervous system. Breaking your rules is not a failure of knowledge. You know what to do. You know when to enter, when to exit, when to size, when to stop. Breaking your rules is a failure of emotional alignment. Your mind and your rules are not living in the same reality. Your logic speaks probabilities. Your emotions speak survival. And survival always wins, unless you learn to rewire the parts of you that feel threatened by uncertainty. So before we talk about discipline, before we discuss structure and systems and probability, we must talk about this pain, the pain that traders rarely admit, the pain of being your own betrayer. Because until you confront that truth, nothing else you build will hold. Not your strategy, not your edge, not your confidence, not your consistency. This is where the journey begins, at the intersection of knowledge and self-sabotage, where rules exist on paper but collapse in the heat of emotion, where you face the most difficult question in all of trading. If I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, why do I keep doing the opposite? There is a moment in every broken rule where your rational mind disappears, not slowly, instantly, like a candle blown out. Neuroscience calls this an emotional hijack, a moment when your amygdala, the ancient survival center of your brain, seizes control from your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, planning, and discipline. You think you are trading the market. You are not. You are trading your nervous system. When price moves against you, when your P&L flashes red, when the uncertainty widens, your brain doesn't interpret these as statistical fluctuations. It interprets them as threats. And threat triggers survival. Survival overrides rules. Survival overrides logic. Survival overrides every calm promise you made to yourself. You are no longer dealing with candlesticks. You are dealing with cortisol, adrenaline, and the instinct to escape discomfort at any cost. This is why the rule breaks come suddenly. You don't think, you react. You don't evaluate, you defend. You don't follow the plan, you flee the pain. Your mind is no longer in the trade, your instincts are. And instincts don't care about probabilities. They only care about safety. When you break your rules, it's not always fear. Sometimes it's the ego. The ego hates being wrong. The ego hates uncertainty. The ego hates drawdowns. The ego hates anything that threatens the story it believes about you. Not because ego is evil, but because ego refuses to accept what the market is showing. So when a trade goes against you, the ego launches a defense loop. This trade shouldn't be losing. The market is wrong, not me. If I hold a little longer, it will come back. Let me move the stop just this once. I can't exit now. It would mean I was wrong. And in order to protect the illusion of being right, you break your own rules. This is the most subtle form of self-sabotage. You violate your system to protect your identity. You don't break your rules for money. You break them for ego preservation. The problem? The market doesn't reward identity. It rewards probability. Humans hate uncertainty. It's been true since the beginning of our species. Mark Douglas believes that traders want certainty in a place where certainty does not exist. Your rules require you to accept uncertainty. Your emotions refuse to. This is the conflict. Every rule you've created, fixed stop, fixed target, fixed sizing, is an attempt to create order in chaos. But when real money enters the picture, uncertainty becomes painful. You don't know if the trade will win. You don't know how long the pullback will last. You don't know if the volatility will expand. You don't know if you're about to take another loss. And because the brain hates the unknown, it pushes you toward impulsive action. Exit early, enter early, move the stop, skip the signal, chase the candle. Not because these choices are logical, but because they provide temporary emotional relief from uncertainty. Rule breaking is not an intellectual failure. It is a biological aversion to the unknown. Every trader has two selves: the designer, the one who writes the rules; the survivor, the one who trades under pressure. The designer is logical, calm, strategic. The survivor is emotional, reactive, instinctual. When you wrote your rules, you were the designer. When real money moves, you become the survivor. These two identities live in conflict. The designer doesn't feel fear. The survivor does. The designer sees probabilities. The survivor sees danger. The designer accepts loss. The survivor resists it with everything he has. When your survivor self feels threatened, it overrides your designer self, and your rules collapse. This identity conflict is the core reason why discipline is fragile. You are not one trader, you are two, and only one of them follows the plan. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort you feel when your actions contradict your beliefs. In trading, this happens constantly. You believe in cutting losses, but you hold losers. You believe in letting winners run, but you exit early. You believe in following the system, but you override it. You believe in risk management, but you size too big. Every contradiction creates emotional tension, and the brain hates tension. So it resolves it by justifying rule breaking. This time is different. The stop is too tight anyway. I'll fix it on the next trade. I'll increase size now and then go back to normal. The brain would rather betray your long-term plan than sit with short-term discomfort. And so the rules bend, and then bend again, and then bend until there are no rules left at all. Your strategy was built for probabilities. Your body was built for survival. The body cares about uncertainty, fear, danger, loss, protection, safety. The market cares about math, statistics, variance, execution, sample size, neutrality. These two operating systems do not speak the same language. Your nervous system reacts to the market like a threat. Your trading plan requires you to react like a statistician. That is the fundamental mismatch. Probability thinking is unnatural. Emotional reaction is automatic. Which one do you think wins in the moment? Not the plan, not the rules, not the logic. Always biology, until you train it. The self-betrayal cycle, how rule breaking repeats. Let's map the cycle. Step 1. Intention. You enter the day committed to following your rules. Step 2. Trigger: a losing streak, a spike in volatility, boredom, or a missed trade. Step 3. Emotional tension. Fear, frustration, FOMO, or shame build. Step 4. Justification. Your mind creates a narrative that makes breaking the rule feel reasonable. Step 5. Violation. You click. Too early, too late, too big, too emotional. Step 6. Relief. A momentary release of tension. This is the addictive part. Step 7. Consequence. Loss, chaos, or regret. Step 8. Shame. You feel disconnected from your own identity. You lose trust in yourself. Step 9. Resolution. You promise to never break the rule again. And then, the cycle repeats. Not because you're weak, but because you haven't changed the emotional components of the loop. How to rebuild trust with yourself. You cannot trade consistently if you do not trust yourself. And trust is built through repetition, not promises. Here is how traders rebuild it. 1. Reduce size until fear disappears. Trust cannot exist in fear. 2. Create micro-promises. Instead of, I will follow all my rules, start with, I will follow my stop-loss on the next 3 trades. 3. Journal emotional honesty. Record not just what you did, but why you did it. 4. Track rule adherence as a metric. Your process score must matter more than your P&L. 5. Separate identity from outcome. You are not your wins, you are not your losses. You are your execution. 6. Use pre-commitment locks, automated stops, size caps, cooldown timers. 7. Build emotional conditioning. Breathing, stillness, micropauses, ritualized entry. Trust grows slowly, but it grows with every moment of integrity. Rules only work if you design an environment where breaking them is difficult. Protocol 1. Pre-trade checklist. Setup valid? Bias neutral? Risk acceptable? Emotional state stable? Protocol 2. Hard stops only. If you manually move them, you don't have a stop. Protocol 3. Risk caps. Daily, weekly, per trade. Protocol 4. Scheduled breaks after losses. A stop loss on your psychology. Protocol 5. One system discipline. No system hopping during emotional turbulence. Protocol 6. Environment design. Remove distractions, remove temptations. Protocol 7. Accountability. Partner or logging. AI transparency creates discipline. Protocols do not replace discipline. They create the conditions in which discipline can survive. A disciplined trader is not emotionally dead. They are emotionally regulated. They feel fear, but do not obey it. They feel uncertainty, but do not panic. They feel pressure, but do not collapse. They feel temptation, but do not betray themselves. Their identity is built on execution, not outcomes. A disciplined trader lives in a state of detached curiosity, probabilistic thinking, calm repetition, emotional neutrality, trust in their process, trust in themselves. That is the ultimate transformation. You stop fighting your rules. You start living them. You stop being 2 traders. You become 1. And now we arrive at the quiet truth, the one that hides beneath every broken rule, every impulsive click, every moment of regret staring back at you from a bleeding P&L. The market never betrayed you. You betrayed yourself. Not out of weakness, not out of ignorance, but out of an ancient battle inside you, between fear and intention, between ego and objectivity, between survival and probability. Every trader eventually reaches this moment, a crossroads, a point where strategy no longer matters, and indicators no longer matter, and analysis no longer matters, because the real enemy is no longer outside. It is internal. The version of you who breaks your rules is not the villain. It is the untrained, frightened part of you still trying to survive uncertainty. But you are not condemned to repeat this cycle. You are not doomed to live in the loop of self-betrayal. You are not destined to keep sabotaging the trader you're trying to become. There comes a day, quiet, almost unremarkable, when you sit before the charts and you feel the old fear rise again. But this time, you do not run. You do not grab the mouse. You do not move the stop. You do not override the plan. This time, you breathe. You wait. You observe. You remain. And in that tiny moment of stillness, something inside you shifts. You realize discipline is not a heroic act. It is not a burst of strength. It is not a grand transformation. Discipline is a choice, repeated quietly, consistently, in the exact moments when breaking your rules would feel easier. You become the trader you admire, not through intelligence, not through luck, not through talent, but through self-loyalty. The loyalty to follow the rules you wrote, to honor the boundaries you set, to protect the future you promised yourself. That is how trust is rebuilt. That is how identity stabilizes. That is how discipline becomes real. Not by eliminating emotion, but by refusing to abandon yourself in the presence of it. And one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you will look at your execution, your calm, your consistency, your restraint, and realize you have become the version of yourself you always hoped would show up when money was on the line. Not the impulsive one, not the frightened one, not the ego-driven one, but the one who stands firm inside uncertainty, inside pressure, inside temptation, and chooses alignment over chaos, integrity over impulse, process over pain. That is the end of rule breaking. Not a dramatic victory, but a quiet evolution. You don't overpower the part of you that breaks the rules. You train it. You integrate it. You teach it to coexist with fear. And when that happens, when your mind and your method finally move as one, something extraordinary occurs. The market stops feeling like an enemy. It becomes a mirror. And the person reflected in it is no longer the trader, but the trader. Disciplined, aligned, unshakable. And that is the beginning of everything you were trying to build.